My husband destroyed the last thing I had left of my grandfather, then told me I was overreacting. I'll show him overreacting. I'd been married to Adrian for 3 years when my grandfather passed away and left me his 1998 sedan. Adrian called it just a hunk of metal the first time I showed him the keys, but to me it was the one tangible piece of my grandfather I could still touch. The leather still smelled faintly like his cologne. The radio presets were still locked to his favorite stations. I handled all the maintenance myself and rarely let anyone else drive it. When my company announced a mandatory week-long training 3 states over, Adrian asked if he could use the car to get to work while I was gone. His own car was in the shop for transmission repairs that kept getting delayed. I hesitated for 2 days before I finally agreed, but I wrote out a simple list of guidelines. Don't ignore new dashboard lights. Keep it parked in our garage overnight, and use the regular station 2 blocks from our house instead of experimenting with random gas that had once clogged the fuel line years ago. Adrian rolled his eyes when I handed him the list. It's a car, not a museum exhibit. I know, I just need you to take care of it. I will, stop worrying. I flew out on Monday morning. The training was brutal, 8 hours a day in a windowless conference room, and by Friday night I was exhausted and relieved to be heading home. I landed around 9, grabbed a rideshare from the airport, and walked through our front door a little after 10. The car wasn't in the garage. I found it parked on the street under a broken streetlight, which Adrian knew I hated because our neighborhood had issues with break-ins. I walked closer and froze. There was a fresh dent along the passenger side, a scrape that ran from the door handle all the way to the rear wheel well. The paint was chipped down to bare metal in 2 spots. I unlocked it with shaking hands. The interior was a disaster. Fast food wrappers covered the back seat. An empty energy drink can had rolled under the passenger seat. The floor mats were caked with mud. The dashboard was lit up with an overdue oil change notification that had been blinking for at least 200 miles. A thick envelope sat on the driver's seat. I opened it. It was from a tow yard downtown, dated 3 days earlier. There was a ticket for parking in a no parking zone, a tow receipt, and an impound release form. The total fees came to $340. Adrian had never mentioned any of this. I walked inside and found him on the couch watching a basketball game. What happened to the car? He glanced up. What do you mean? There's a dent. The inside is trashed. You got it towed and didn't tell me. He shrugged. The dent was from a parking lot. Someone must have hit it while I was inside getting groceries. I didn't see it happen. And the tow? I parked in the wrong spot for like 20 minutes. They towed it before I got back. I had to pay to get it out. It's not a big deal. You didn't think to mention it? I handled it. What's there to mention? My voice cracked. You didn't follow any of the things I asked you to do. You ignored the oil change light. You left it on the street. You didn't even clean up after yourself. Adrian stood up and crossed his arms. You're seriously mad at me right now? I used the car for a week because mine was broken. I didn't crash it. I didn't total it. There's a tiny dent that I didn't cause, and you're acting like I committed a crime. It's not about the dent. It's about how you treated something you knew mattered to me. It's a car. It's metal and plastic and rubber. The emotional weight you put on stuff is exhausting. It was my grandfather's. And now it's yours. And you're using it to guilt me for not babying a 25-year-old sedan for 7 days. That's ridiculous. I stared at him. He wasn't apologizing. He wasn't explaining what had actually happened or why he'd hidden the ticket and the tow. He was angry at me for being upset. I trusted you with it. Yeah, and I used it. That's what cars are for. He grabbed his phone off the coffee table. I'm going to bed. I'm not doing this tonight. He walked past me toward the bedroom. I stood in the living room holding the tow yard envelope and tried to figure out when exactly he'd decided that my feelings didn't matter. I spent Saturday morning at the mechanic. The dent was going to cost $800 to fix properly. The oil change was overdue by 300 miles, and the filter was black when they pulled it out. They also found a brake pad issue that had been flagged on the last service report I'd left in the glove box, the one Adrian would have seen if he'd bothered to look when the brake warning light came on. When did this light turn on? The mechanic asked. I don't know, I just got back. Whoever was driving this ignored it for at least a few days. You're lucky they didn't do more damage. I paid for the repairs and drove home. Adrian was in the kitchen making lunch. How much? He asked without looking up. $800 for the dent, another $250 for the oil and brakes. Insurance should cover the dent. Our deductible is $1,000. It's not worth filing. He bit into his sandwich. Then I guess it's staying dented. I already paid for it. With what money? Our savings. He stopped chewing. You didn't ask me. You didn't ask me before you got it towed. That's different. How? He put the sandwich down. Because I was handling an emergency. You're spending $1,000 to fix cosmetic damage on a car that's older than most college students. It's not cosmetic. The brakes were failing. They were fine when I drove it. Because you ignored the warning light. Adrian wiped his hands on a towel and tossed it onto the counter. I'm done talking about this. You got your car back. You fixed it. Move on. He walked out of the kitchen. I stood there staring at the towel on the floor and realized he wasn't going to apologize. Not today. Not ever. By Monday, I started hearing things. My friend Rebecca texted me asking if everything was okay at home. I called her back during my lunch break. What do you mean? Adrian said you guys had a huge fight over your car. We did. He trashed it while I was gone and didn't tell me it got towed. Rebecca hesitated. He said you were upset about a dent. There's more to it than that. He ignored the maintenance stuff I asked him to handle. He hit a $300 tow bill. He didn't take care of it. I mean, it's just a car though, right? It sounds like he had a rough week and made some mistakes. It was my grandfather's car. I know, but at some point it's just a thing. Adrian's your husband. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Did he tell you it was just a dent? He said you care more about the car than your marriage. He sounded really hurt. I hung up. That night, I tried talking to Adrian's younger sister, Corinne, who'd always been reasonable. She came over for dinner, and I thought maybe she'd understand if I laid out the whole timeline. He didn't just dent it, I said. He got it towed, hid the bill, ignored the oil change, and left it trashed. Then he acted like I was crazy for being upset. Corinne nodded slowly. That does sound frustrating. It's not about the car. It's about the fact that he didn't care. I get that. But Adrian said you handed him this whole list of rules before you left, and he felt like you were setting him up to fail. I asked him to follow 3 basic things. Keep it in the garage, don't ignore the dashboard, use the right gas. Right, but from his side, it felt like a test, like you didn't actually trust him. Because he didn't do any of it. Corinne picked at her salad. I think maybe you both have valid feelings here. He messed up, but you're also putting a lot of emotional weight on an object. It's hard for him to compete with that. I'm not asking him to compete with anything. I'm asking him to respect something that mattered to me. She gave me a sympathetic look that somehow made it worse. I think you guys just need some space to cool off. It'll blow over. It didn't blow over. By Wednesday, I'd heard from 2 more friends that Adrian had mentioned the fight. One of them asked if we were thinking about counseling. Another one made a joke about me being precious about my stuff. Every version I heard was missing the toe, the ticket, and the ignored brake light. Every version made it sound like I'd lost my mind over a parking lot ding. I confronted Adrian that night. You've been telling people I care more about a car than our marriage. He looked up from his laptop. I've been telling people we had a fight. That's what happened. You're leaving out everything you did wrong. I'm telling them my side. You can tell them yours. Your side makes me sound insane. Maybe that's because you're acting insane. You hit a tow bill. You ignored the maintenance I asked you to handle. You lied by omission for 3 days. Adrian closed his laptop. You handed me a car and a list of instructions like I was a teenager borrowing the family van. You didn't trust me. You set up all these rules so you could come back and punish me for breaking them. That's what this is really about. That's not true. Then why are we still fighting about it a week later? Why are you nickel and diming every little thing I did wrong instead of accepting that accidents happen? Because you won't take responsibility for any of it. I don't need to take responsibility for your feelings about a car. He opened his laptop again. I realized we weren't talking about the same thing anymore. He'd rewritten the whole story in his head, and now I was the villain. I walked out of the room and heard him typing, probably messaging someone else about how unreasonable I was being. I sat on the edge of our bed and wondered how many more people he'd told, how many of them believed him, how long I could keep defending myself in my own marriage. The next morning, I found the car keys sitting in the exact center of the kitchen table on top of a folded dish towel. Adrian walked past me to the coffee maker and poured himself a cup without saying a word. What's this? Your keys. I'm not touching the car again. I never said you couldn't use it. You didn't have to. He took a sip and stared at me over the rim of the mug. I know how you feel about it now. That's not fair. Neither is getting crucified for a week's worth of bad luck. He set the mug down with a soft click. But hey, at least you have your grandfather's car back in perfect condition. That's what matters, right? He left for work 20 minutes later. I stood in the kitchen holding the keys and feeling like I'd been set up for something I couldn't name. That night, I looked up couples counselors. I found one who specialized in communication issues and had an opening the following week. I texted Adrian the appointment details and asked if he could take an early lunch to make it work. He texted back 3 hours later. I'm not going to therapy over a car. I called him. He answered on the 4th ring. It's not about the car. It's about how we handle conflict. How we communicate when something goes wrong. I communicate fine. You're the one who can't let anything go. Then come to one session and tell the counselor that. Let someone neutral hear both sides. I'm not paying someone $150 to tell you that you have control issues. Control issues? You made a list of rules for a car. You're still mad a week later. You're spending our savings without asking me. You tell me that's not about control? I'm trying to fix our relationship. No, you're trying to fix me. There's a difference. He paused. If you want therapy, go by yourself. I'm not the one who needs it. He hung up. I sat on the couch staring at my phone. The appointment confirmation email glowed on the screen. I canceled it 10 minutes later. My best friend Elliot came over on Saturday with takeout and beer. We'd known each other since college, and he'd always been the person I could say anything to. I told him the whole story from the beginning, every detail I'd been holding in for 2 weeks. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he took a long drink and set the bottle down carefully. I think you're right to be upset. Thank you. But I also think maybe you're putting a lot of grief onto that car. I felt my throat tighten. What does that mean? Your grandfather died 8 months ago. You're still processing that. And now Adrian messed up the one physical thing you had left of him, so it feels bigger than it is. It is big. He lied to me. He didn't tell you about a toe because he knew you'd be upset. That's not great, but it's not exactly lying. He hit a $300 bill for 3 days. Okay, but he paid it. He handled it. He made a mistake and he fixed it without bothering you during your training. Elliot leaned forward. I'm not saying he's blameless. I'm saying maybe he deserves a little grace here. He had a stressful week. His car was broken. He was trying to help you out by not making you deal with ride shares or rentals. And yeah, some stuff went wrong. That happens. He didn't apologize. Because you came at him like he'd committed a crime. You didn't give him room to apologize. You went straight to accusations. I didn't accuse him of anything he didn't do. Elliot picked at the label on his beer bottle. Do you hear yourself right now? You're litigating every detail like you're building a case. That's not how marriages work. Then how do they work? You forgive people. You move on. You don't keep score. I looked at him. Did Adrian talk to you? He mentioned you guys were fighting. He said it was about the car. He sounded really torn up about it. What did he say exactly? That he feels like he can't do anything right. That you care more about objects than you do about him. That he's starting to wonder if you even want to be married. My hands went numb. He said that? Not in those words. But yeah, that was the vibe. And you believed him. I believe both of you. I think you're both hurting and you're talking past each other. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I love you. You know that. But I think you need to let this go before it kills your marriage. He left an hour later. I sat on the couch with my phone in my lap and realized I had no one left to talk to. Adrian's parents invited us to dinner the following Thursday. His mom was making lasagna and his dad wanted to show off the new grill he'd bought. I didn't want to go, but Adrian said skipping it would make things worse. We drove over in silence. Dinner was fine until Adrian's dad asked how we were doing. Adrian said we were great. His mom looked at me and smiled. I heard you two had a little spat about the car. I froze. It wasn't really a spat. Oh, I know how it is. My father left me his old watch, and I used to get so anxious whenever anyone else wore it. But eventually you realize it's just a thing. It doesn't love you back. Adrian's dad laughed. She's more married to that car than she is to you, Adrian? Everyone chuckled. I felt my face go hot. It wasn't about the car. It was about the way he handled it. Adrian's mom reached over and patted my hand. Of course, sweetheart, but you have to admit, it's a little intense to get this worked up over a fender bender. It wasn't just a fender bender. He got it towed and didn't tell me. He ignored the maintenance. Adrian cut me off. She's still upset. We're working through it. His dad raised his beer. Marriage is all about compromise. You'll figure it out. His mom started clearing plates. The conversation moved on to Adrian's sister's new job. I sat there with my hands in my lap and said nothing for the rest of the meal. On the drive home, Adrian turned the radio up. I stared out the window and tried to figure out when I'd become the problem. Every conversation ended the same way. Every person I talked to had heard his version first. Every time I tried to explain what had actually happened, I sounded defensive and petty. He'd made me the villain in my own story, and I had no idea how to rewrite it. We pulled into the driveway. Adrian turned off the engine and looked at me. You embarrassed me tonight. I was trying to explain what happened. You were trying to make me look bad in front of my parents. That's what you were doing. They made a joke about me being married to a car. Because you are. You've spent 2 weeks obsessing over a dent and some fast food trash. You've turned a minor inconvenience into a full-blown crisis. And now everyone we know thinks I'm married to someone who values objects more than people. He got out of the car and walked inside. I sat in the passenger seat with my hands shaking and wondered how much longer I could keep fighting a battle I'd already lost. My older brother Liam flew in that weekend for a work conference downtown. He asked if he could crash with us for 2 nights instead of getting a hotel. I said yes before Adrian could say no. Liam showed up Friday evening with his duffel bag and a 6-pack. Adrian shook his hand, made small talk for 10 minutes, then said he had emails to catch up on and disappeared into the bedroom. Liam waited until the door clicked shut. What's going on? I told him everything. The dent, the trash, the tow bill Adrian had hidden for 3 days, the oil change he'd ignored, the brake light. The way every conversation since then had turned into me defending myself while Adrian rewrote the story to make me sound unreasonable. Liam listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back against the couch and rubbed his face. He hid a tow bill? For 3 days. Just left the envelope on the seat when I got home. And he's telling people you're overreacting about a dent. Everyone I talked to has already heard his version. They think I'm being precious about an old car. Liam pulled out his phone. Do you have the receipt? The ticket? The mechanic's report? Yeah, why? Because you need to document all of it. Take pictures. Keep a file. If this is how he handles conflict now, you need to know the pattern. You think this is a pattern? I think someone who lies by omission and then turns it around on you when you call them out has done it before. You just haven't been paying attention. I thought about the time Adrian had promised to pay our water bill, and then let it go to collections because he'd forgotten. He'd blamed the utility company for not sending reminders. I thought about the time he'd borrowed my credit card for gas and racked up $200 at a bar, then acted offended when I asked him to pay it back. He'd said I was being controlling about money. Liam saw my face. Yeah, that's what I thought. He stayed up with me until midnight, going through old bank statements and text threads. By the time we stopped, I had a folder on my laptop with 15 separate incidents over the last 2 years where Adrian had either hidden something, blamed me for his mistake, or reframed the story to make himself the victim. What do I do with this? You keep it, and you start thinking about whether you want to be married to someone who does this every time something goes wrong. Adrian came out of the bedroom the next morning and saw Liam making coffee in the kitchen. He poured himself a cup without saying good morning. You two were up late. We were catching up, I said. Sounded like more than that. What does that mean? Adrian set his mug down. It means I could hear you going through our finances. I could hear you talking about me like I wasn't 20 feet away. Liam leaned against the counter. She was telling me what happened with the car. Right, her version. The version where you hid a $300 tow bill and then told everyone she was crazy for being upset about a dent. Adrian's jaw tightened. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She's turning my own family against me. I'm her family, not yours. You know what I mean. Adrian looked at me. You're trying to build a case. You're lining up witnesses. You're documenting everything so you can throw it in my face later. That's what you're doing. I'm trying to understand why you keep lying to me. I'm not lying. I'm just not reporting every tiny detail of my day to you like you're my parole officer. He grabbed his keys off the counter. I'm going to the gym. When I get back, your brother needs to be gone. He left. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the frame. Liam finished his coffee. You can't stay with him? I know. He flew out that afternoon. I drove him to the airport and sat in the passenger pickup lane with the engine running after he got out. I thought about driving home. I thought about calling Adrian and apologizing just to make the fighting stop. I thought about how much easier it would be to let this go and pretend everything was fine. I drove home. Adrian didn't speak to me for 2 days. On Tuesday, he texted me that our friends Garrett and Simone wanted to have us over for dinner on Friday and that we were going. I knew what it was. A performance. A chance for him to control the narrative in front of people who mattered. I went anyway. Garrett grilled steaks while Simone made salad and garlic bread. Adrian was charming the entire time, laughing at Garrett's jokes, complimenting the food, acting like everything between us was perfect. I sat next to him and said as little as possible. Halfway through dinner, Simone asked how we were doing. Adrian put his fork down and smiled. We're good. We had a rough patch a couple weeks ago, but we're working through it. What happened? Garrett asked. I borrowed her car while mine was in the shop, and I ended up with a dent in a parking lot. Total accident. But it's her grandfather's old car, so she was pretty upset. I get it. I apologized. We're moving past it. Simone reached over and squeezed my hand. That must have been hard. I'm glad you guys are okay. I looked at Adrian. He was still smiling. He's leaving out the part where he got it towed and hid the ticket from me for 3 days. The table went quiet. Adrian's smile didn't move. I didn't hide it. I paid it and left the receipt in the car so you'd have the documentation. You're making it sound like I was trying to deceive you. You didn't mention it. Not once. I found out when I got home and saw the envelope. Because I handled it. I didn't want to bother you while you were at training. He turned to Garrett. I thought I was doing her a favor. Apparently, I was supposed to call and confess every minor inconvenience. It wasn't minor. It was $300. And you ignored the oil change and the brake light I asked you to watch. Adrian pushed his chair back and stood up. I can't do this. I can't sit here and get criticized in front of our friends for something I already apologized for. You never apologized. He looked at Simone and Garrett. This is what I've been dealing with for 2 weeks. Constant criticism, constant blame. I made a mistake and I owned it, but it's never enough. He walked out the front door. Garrett stared at his plate. Simone looked at me with something like pity. Maybe you guys need some space, she said quietly. I left 10 minutes later. I sat in my car in their driveway and checked my phone. Adrian had already texted the group chat we shared with 6 other friends. Just left dinner early. Can't handle the constant attacks anymore. I know I messed up with the car, but I feel like I'm being punished for trying to help. I don't know how much more of this I can take. 3 people had already responded with supportive messages. I drove home and found Adrian in the bedroom packing a duffel bag. What are you doing? I'm staying at my parents' for a few days. I need space. You need space. This isn't working. Running away isn't going to fix anything. Neither is turning everyone we know against me. But here we are. He zipped the bag and slung it over his shoulder. If you keep doing this, if you keep dragging people into our private problems and making me out to be the bad guy, I'm not coming back. I'm serious. I'm done being the villain in your story. He left. I stood in the empty bedroom and tried to figure out what had just happened. He'd apologized in public for something he'd never apologized for in private. He'd reframed the entire fight as me being unreasonable. He'd walked out and made it look like I'd driven him away. And now half our friends thought I was an emotional wreck who couldn't let go of a parking lot dent. On Monday, my coworker Bryn stopped by my desk during lunch. She'd met Adrian a few times at company events and I'd mentioned the fight to her in passing the week before. Can I talk to you for a second? We went to the break room. She closed the door. I heard Adrian's version of what happened. My husband works with his friend Chris and they were talking about it over the weekend. What did he say? That you've been obsessing over a car for 2 weeks and that you're making his life miserable over a mistake? That you're talking to lawyers. She paused. Are you talking to lawyers? No, I talked to my brother, that's it. Bryn folded her arms. I'm going to say something and I need you to hear me. Separate your finances. Open your own account. Start keeping records of everything. Dates, times, what was said, what was promised. If he's already rewriting history this fast and this publicly, it's going to get worse. You think he's lying? I think he's managing his image. And I think people who do that don't stop when things get harder. They double down. She left. I sat in the break room staring at the vending machine and realized I couldn't trust him with anything anymore. Not the car, not our money, not the truth about what had happened between us. Every conversation was a performance. Every apology was conditional. Every mistake was my fault. I opened my laptop that night and started looking at apartments. Adrian stayed at his parents' house for 4 days. He texted me once to say he'd be back on Friday to get more clothes. I didn't respond. On Wednesday night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the dinner at Garrett and Simone's house. The way Adrian had stood up and walked out like I'd attacked him in front of witnesses. The way he'd apologized for something he'd never actually apologized for. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand and opened our shared cloud account to look for the photo I'd taken of the tow receipt. That's when I saw it. Adrian's text messages were syncing to the cloud. He'd never turned off the backup feature. I scrolled through the threads and found one with his coworker Dennis, a guy I'd met twice at company barbecues. The first message was from the day I'd come home from training. She's losing her mind over the car, acting like I killed her dog. Dennis had replied, yikes, what happened? Got it towed. Didn't tell her right away because I knew she'd freak. Now she's treating me like a criminal. I kept scrolling. 3 days later, Adrian had written, I swear I'm married to someone who values objects over people. Her dead grandpa's car matters more than I do. Dennis. That's rough, man. Adrian. I should have just crashed Grandpa's shrine on wheels and saved myself the guilt trip. I stared at the screen. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I took screenshots of the entire conversation. Then I went back further and found more threads. One with his sister Corinne where he called me exhausting and said he was walking on eggshells because I couldn't let anything go. Another with his friend Chris where he joked that I'd probably demand a prenup for the car if we ever renewed our vows. I saved everything to a separate folder and emailed the screenshots to myself. By morning I'd barely slept. I called Liam at 7 and told him what I'd found. Send them to me. I forwarded the screenshots. He called back 10 minutes later. This is worse than I thought. He joked about crashing it. He's not joking. He's testing the water. He's seeing how far he can push the narrative before someone calls him out. Liam paused. You need to talk to a lawyer. Not for divorce. Just to understand your options. What protecting yourself looks like if this keeps escalating. I don't even know where to start. I'll send you a name. Someone I worked with on a contract case last year. She does family law. She's good. The referral came through an hour later. I called and got an appointment for Friday afternoon. I also called Elliot. He picked up on the second ring. Hey, I wasn't sure you'd want to talk to me after last time. I need you to see something. I met him for coffee that afternoon and showed him the screenshots on my phone. He read through them without saying anything. When he finished, he set the phone down and stared at his cup. I'm sorry. For what? For telling you to let it go. For acting like you were overreacting. I didn't know he was doing this. He told everyone I was the problem. You believed him. I know. And I'm telling you right now that I was wrong. Elliot leaned forward. This isn't a guy who made a mistake and feels bad about it. This is a guy who's angry at you for holding him accountable. That's different. That's dangerous. What do I do? You stop trying to fix this. You stop explaining yourself to people who've already chosen a side. You protect yourself, and you get out before he does something worse. I left the coffee shop feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because someone finally believed me. Heavier because I knew what came next. On Friday, I went to the lawyer's office. Her name was Diane Corman, and her office was in a converted brownstone downtown. She had gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, and the kind of calm, direct voice that made you feel like she'd seen worse. I showed her the screenshots. I showed her the bank statements Liam had helped me pull. I told her about the tow bill, the ignored maintenance, the way Adrian had rewritten every conversation to make me sound unstable. She took notes on a yellow legal pad and didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she looked up. This is a pattern, not an isolated incident, a pattern. I know. If you decide to separate, you need to protect 3 things: your finances, your assets, and your reputation. Right now, he's controlling the narrative. That gives him power. You need to take that power back. How? You open your own bank account tomorrow. You move half of your shared savings into it. You document every conversation, every text, every financial transaction from this point forward. You stop engaging with mutual friends who've already taken his side. You stop defending yourself. You let the evidence speak for itself. What about the car? The car is yours. It was a gift from your grandfather. If you inherited it, it's separate property. He has no claim to it. But if he damages it or disposes of it out of spite, that's a different conversation. I felt my chest tighten. You think he'd do that? I think someone who jokes about crashing something that matters to you is telling you exactly who they are. Believe them. She walked me through the steps for a legal separation. How to file, what to expect, what it would cost. By the time I left, I had a folder full of documents and a checklist of things to do before Adrian came back. I drove straight to the mechanic. The same guy who'd done the oil change and the brake work was there. I asked if he could write up a formal report detailing everything that had been wrong with the car when I'd brought it in. He printed it out 20 minutes later. The report listed the overdue oil change, the ignored brake warning light, the brake pad wear that had gone unaddressed for at least a week, and a note that said, deferred maintenance could have resulted in brake failure at highway speeds. He signed it and dated it and handed it to me in a sealed envelope. For insurance? For protection. He didn't ask any more questions. I drove home and added the report to the folder with the screenshots and the bank statements. Then I sat on the couch with my laptop and opened a new document. I started writing down every incident I could remember over the last 2 years. Every lie, every reframing, every time Adrian had promised something and then blamed me when it fell apart. By the time I finished, it was 11 pages long. Adrian texted me around 8 that night. Coming by tomorrow to get my stuff. I'll be there around noon. I replied, okay. I didn't tell him I'd talked to a lawyer. I didn't tell him I'd found the texts. I didn't tell him I'd opened my own bank account that afternoon and moved $4,000 into it. I just said okay. Because I was done explaining. I was done defending. I was done letting him control the story. Tomorrow he was going to hear mine. Adrian walked through the door at noon carrying 2 empty duffel bags. He didn't say hello. He walked straight past me toward the bedroom. We need to talk first. He stopped in the hallway. I'm just here to get my things. I know, but we're talking first. He turned around slowly. His face was already set in that defensive expression I'd learned to recognize over the last 2 weeks. About what? I gestured toward the dining table. Sit down. I'm not doing this right now. Yes, you are. Something in my voice must have registered because he walked to the table and dropped into a chair. I sat across from him and opened the folder I'd been keeping on the counter. I found your texts. His eyes went to the folder. What texts? The ones backing up to our shared cloud. The conversation with Dennis where you joked about crashing Grandpa's shrine on wheels. The one with Corinne where you called me exhausting. The one with Chris where you said I'd probably make you sign a prenup for the car. His jaw tightened. You went through my phone? I went through our shared cloud account. The one you never turned off. That's a violation of privacy. So is lying to everyone we know about what actually happened. I slid the printed screenshots across the table. You told people I was overreacting about a dent. You left out the toe. You left out the ignored brake light. You made me sound crazy. He barely glanced at the pages. Those were private conversations I was venting. You were building a narrative. You were making sure everyone heard your version first so mine wouldn't matter. That's not what I was doing. I pulled out the mechanic's report and set it on top of the screenshots. This is from the shop. It says the brake pads were worn down to dangerous levels. It says ignoring the warning light could have caused brake failure at highway speeds. You didn't just forget to check the oil. You put yourself and everyone else on the road at risk because you couldn't be bothered to follow basic instructions. Adrian stared at the report. His face had gone pale. I didn't know it was that serious. The light was on for days. You saw it. You ignored it. I thought it was just a sensor issue. You didn't think anything. You didn't care. I pulled out the tow yard receipt and the original ticket. And you hid this for 3 days. You paid $340 to get the car out of impound and you never mentioned it once until I found the envelope. Because I knew you'd lose it. I lost it because you lied. Not because of the ticket. Because you hid it and then acted like I was insane for being upset when I found out. He pushed the papers back toward me. You're twisting this. You handed me a car with a list of rules and then you went through my private messages to build a case against me. That's what you're doing right now. You're prosecuting me. I'm holding you accountable. For what? For making mistakes? For not being perfect? His voice was rising. You set me up. You gave me something you knew mattered too much, and then you waited for me to screw up so you could punish me for it. I didn't set you up. I asked you to do 3 basic things. You didn't do any of them, because they were tests. Every single one of them was a test to see if I'd fail. I felt something cold settle in my chest. If I can't trust you with a car, how am I supposed to trust you with our future children? Or shared finances? Or any major life decision? The words landed like a slap. Adrian's face went red. Are you kidding me right now? You're comparing me borrowing a car to raising kids? I'm comparing your pattern of hiding mistakes and blaming me when I find out. There's no pattern. You're inventing one because you can't let go of a stupid car. It's not about the car. It's about the fact that every time something goes wrong, you lie, you hide it, and then you rewrite the story to make me the villain. That's the pattern. Adrian stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. You know what? You're right. I can't do anything right. I can't borrow your car without getting crucified. I can't vent to my friends without you spying on me. I can't make a single mistake without you documenting it and adding it to your little evidence file. You're not trying to fix this. You're trying to control me. I'm trying to understand why you keep lying to me. I'm not lying. I'm just not reporting every tiny detail of my life to you like you're my parole officer. He grabbed his phone off the table. You want to know the truth? The truth is, you care more about objects than you do about people. You care more about a 25-year-old sedan than you do about our marriage. You're weaponizing sentimentality so you can punish me for not being the perfect husband you invented in your head. That's not true. Then why are we still fighting about this 2 weeks later? Why are you sitting here with a folder full of evidence like you're building a legal case? Why can't you just forgive me and move on? Because you never apologized. I apologized at Garrett's house. You apologized in public for something you never apologized for in private. You performed an apology so other people would think you'd taken responsibility. That's not the same thing. Adrian stared at me. For a second, I thought he might actually hear what I was saying. Then his expression hardened. You're unbelievable. You know that? You're standing here accusing me of lying while you went through my private messages without permission. You opened a separate bank account behind my back. You talked to a lawyer. Don't think I didn't notice the withdrawal. And now you're acting like I'm the one who's destroying this marriage. You noticed the withdrawal? I check our accounts every week. $4,000 disappeared on Thursday. You want to talk about honesty? Let's talk about that. I moved my half into my own account because I don't trust you with our money anymore. Our money. You just said it. Our money. Not yours. Ours. He stepped closer. You don't get to unilaterally decide how we handle finances just because you're mad at me. I get to protect myself when you've proven I can't trust you. Protect yourself from what? From me? I'm your husband. You're someone who hides things and then blames me for finding them. The bedroom door opened. Liam stepped into the hallway. I hadn't told Adrian he was staying in the guest room. Adrian turned. What are you doing here? I've been here since Wednesday. Liam walked into the dining room and leaned against the wall. I heard everything. Adrian's face went from red to white. You've been listening to our private conversation? You were shouting. I didn't have a choice. This is insane. You're both insane. Adrian grabbed his keys off the table. I'm not doing this. I'm not standing here getting ambushed in my own house. It's her house too, Liam said quietly, and she's not ambushing you. She's showing you documentation of things you actually did and said. There's a difference. Adrian pointed at him. Stay out of this. I'm already in it. You made sure of that when you started telling everyone she was crazy for being upset about something you caused and then hid. I didn't hide anything. I handled it. You hid a $300 tow bill for 3 days. You ignored a brake warning that could have gotten someone killed. You joked about crashing the car to your coworker. That's not handling things. That's sabotage. Adrian's hands were shaking. I was venting. People vent. That doesn't mean I was actually going to do anything. Then why say it? Because I was frustrated. Because she makes everything into a federal case. Because I can't breathe in this relationship without getting accused of something. Liam crossed his arms. If you can't handle being held accountable for your own actions, that's on you, not her. Adrian looked at me. His eyes were wet. For a second, I thought he might actually break down and admit what he'd done. Then his expression shifted into something I'd never seen before. Pure contempt. You want a divorce? Is that what this is? I felt my throat close up. I want you to take responsibility for what you did. I did. I apologized. I paid for the repairs. I'm still getting punished. You apologized in public after lying to everyone we know. That's not the same thing. It's never going to be enough for you. Nothing I do will ever be enough. He grabbed his duffel bags off the floor. I'm leaving. I'll come back for the rest of my stuff next week. If you want to file for separation, go ahead. I'm done defending myself. He walked toward the door. Liam stepped in front of him. You owe her an actual apology before you leave. Get out of my way. Apologize for lying. Apologize for hiding the ticket. Apologize for mocking her to your friends. Do it now or I'm going to make sure everyone who heard your version hears hers too. Adrian's jaw clenched. He looked at me one more time. I'm sorry you feel like I didn't care. I'm sorry the car got damaged. I'm sorry I'm not the person you want me to be. That's not an apology. That's blame dressed up as remorse. He pushed past Liam and walked out. The door slammed so hard the windows rattled. I sat down at the table and stared at the folder full of evidence. Liam walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. You okay? No. You did the right thing. It doesn't feel right. It will, eventually. I spent the next week moving the car to a storage unit across town. I didn't trust Adrian not to damage it out of spite. I opened a separate checking account and moved another $2,000. I started sleeping in the guest room. Adrian came by twice to pick up clothes and both times he didn't say a word to me. Our friends stopped texting. The group chat went silent. Rebecca sent me one message asking if I was okay and I didn't respond. The repairs cost me $1,200 total. The tow and the ticket were another $340. The lawyer's consultation was $200. The storage unit was $80 a month. I sat in the empty house on Friday night and added it all up. Over $1,500 in direct costs. 2 years of lies I'd ignored. A marriage that might not survive. But I knew something I hadn't known 2 weeks ago. I knew exactly who Adrian was when things went wrong. I knew he'd choose his image over my feelings every single time. I knew he valued being right more than being honest. And I knew I couldn't live with someone who saw my grief as a weapon to use against me. The car sat in storage with a fresh coat of wax and new brake pads. The leather still smelled faintly like my grandfather's cologne. It was just metal and rubber and plastic, but it was mine. And I'd protected it the only way I knew how. I couldn't say the same about my marriage.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.